So, why did I talk about this book, How to Become Famous? When I read this book, I realized that we all have a gift. We all have something that we can share with the world. And the point is not to become famous or not. I mean, if you do, that's good, because these days being famous is the thing. And especially on YouTube, if let's say you have a lot of views and a lot of followers, it's a way to make money. Obviously that's my intention here too, but I also want to share the gifts that I have with whoever is going to benefit from it, and so that before I lose it, or I don't use it and lose it, then I don't regret later. So there's always something that is more individual, like for ourselves. Now, in this video I'm going to introduce a few books very briefly that has had a very huge impact on my life. That I have, I mean, there are a lot of books, but there are just a few books that basically changes your perspective after you read them. Because there's another reason I'm doing this video is to look back and if I'm still alive years from now, I can look back and basically see myself live instead of just pictures. So before I share my very first book, I do want to talk about this very powerful equation, the E equals mc squared, that Einstein came up with. Einstein was obsessed with how Newton was taught, or the process of thinking of Newton, because Einstein always was wondering that out of millions and billions of humans who came along, why was it that Newton, when the apple came down and hit on his head, he asked the question that why did this apple not go up or go straight and just came down and hit me? And then, I mean, that's the story, obviously, and Newton basically came up with the theory with the gravitational pull theory. Then being obsessed with how the thought process of Newton was, and in one famous occasion Einstein said that my whole purpose is to figure out how God thought or thinks. I don't know the exact word at this point. He wasn't really talking about God, but he was talking about Newton, because Newton to him was equivalent to God at that time. So Einstein comes with the famous E equals mc squared, where E is energy, m is mass, and c is the speed of light. So the point is that if any mass travels at the speed of light, then it becomes energy. And that's the equation we used to make atomic bomb. That's the equation we use today to do all kinds of things. Like we send astronauts outside in the universe. Even in medicine, they use this equation. And then there was another person who like completely was absorbed in Einstein's thinking this time, and Einstein's brain. And his name is Stephen Hawking. Now, Stephen Hawking was an astrophysicist. His most famous book is The History of Time. And Stephen Hawking was paralyzed. Like all of his body stopped working. Only his brain was working. And the doctor said that you only have 2 years. But he said that I'm gonna live on the sheer power of my brain. You see, our brain is what makes us different from other animals on Earth. Because of our brain, we think that we are better than others. Others, I mean like other animals. We even have come up with the whole idea that there's us and then there's like the rest of the world, which basically is not true, right? Because at the end of the day, we are just another animal living among other animals. But we don't tend to accept that analogy. And there's also that famous quote that in our neck of woods, people are measured from the neck up, not the neck down. Basically, the space between your 2 ears, that's the most important thing about you. And that's what you should be taking care of. Because Stephen Hawking is the living proof that how powerful our brain is, and obviously Einstein. Now, I read this a few days ago, well, not a few days ago, exactly 4 months ago, how Einstein came up with Stephen Hawking gave us an understanding of how the universe works, specifically the black holes. Einstein was, even though he had proved that black holes exist with his mathematical formulas, but he wasn't very sure. But with the working brain of Stephen Hawking, he took us to this journey of the universe. So I was very, very inspired when I heard how powerful our brain is. So just to experiment, I for so many years there was one question that always puzzled me, that I could never understand. And because of this question, and because I did not have an answer for it, I have basically looked into a lot of books and talked to quite a lot of people, just try to find the answer for myself. But after learning this fact about the power of brain of Stephen Hawking, and then he was inspired by Einstein's brain, who was inspired by Newton's brain, I decided, let me do an experiment and see if my brain can think like that. They say, how do physicists think, or how did Einstein think? They usually, whenever they are by themselves, they're either looking at a window, but in their mind they are putting formulas together. Or if they're like staring at a wall, they're still like in their mind they are putting things together. And I'm trying to basically copy the same situation. And my question is that, why do some people end up doing some things or achieving their goals, but thousands of others end up coming short? Basically, if you go back to like 10th grade or 11th or 12th grade in high school or middle school, if you ask anyone in the classroom, they all have dreams, right? Like one wants to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or pilot, or all kinds of, careers that are out there. But fast forward 10, 20 years later, when they're in their 30s and 40s, only 10 to 5% of those people end up achieving those goals, but the rest kind of disappears in infinity. So why is that? And that was my question. And I have a day off, and I'm sitting in a corner in Starbucks, and basically drinking my coffee and looking at the window, but in my head trying to see if I can put together something to get an answer. And I was like, wait, I could actually use this. Everybody says that this equation is very powerful, so what if I replace those elements and see if I can come up with an answer? And after 20 minutes of like pushing my brain and thinking and putting those elements together, voila, I got it. And I ran to the cashier at the Starbucks, and I asked for a paper and a pen. They gave me this bag, and he gave me a marker, like a big marker basically, because I had the formula in my head, but I didn't have a pen and a paper, so I wanted to write it down, and I did. So E equals mc squared basically says that for a mass m, if it travels at the speed of light, double the speed of light, c squared, then it becomes energy E. So in my case, I said, if I replace E with A, which is, well, that day I replaced it with G, which is goal, and put my name. I said if Murtaza, and then C I said as a time, because Murtaza M is constant. G is the goal, which is the result on this side of the equation. What can be changed here is the c square, which is time, and then the square I replaced it with focus. And over time I worked on this equation for a few days and kind of like clarified it. So I came up with this, that if A is on the left side where E is in the equation, A equals Murtaza M by T, which is time, and the square of F, double F, which makes it, F is focus, and double F means like hyper focus. So if Murtaza decides to hyper focus, means use his time on a particular task, then the result has to be A. And that's how we are able to achieve something. Now, this is the result, this is the reason why a lot of people end up not doing something, because they either get distracted, emotions get in the way, family responsibility, and all kinds of other things. And then years later, the blame game starts, or the regret starts. They are like, oh, if I had not done that, if so and so had not come into my life, and so had not happened, then I would have been there, meaning I would have achieved that goal. Now everybody's situation is different. If for some reason they had decided to focus that time and choose to focus on that, doing on that particular task, then they would have achieved it on this side of the equation. I will talk more about this in my upcoming book, but the point I'm trying to make is that somehow this brain of mine, like this space between my 2 ears, it was able to think for 20 minutes like Einstein, and he was able to come up with a formula, and that's amazing. And since then I have been very, very inspired to work on my gifts, focus on my talents, and then also be able to share that with whoever is able to watch this video. And obviously nobody else watches it, then I'll come back and watch it myself. Because for me, moving forward, the goal is not as important as the journey, because you have to enjoy the journey. You have to put your attention and your focus on the work, and then the A will happen based on this equation. And you do have to start with nothing if you do want to start something, and that nothing comes from this book. Nothing is what you think it is. So I'm going to read a paragraph from this book. It's The Achievement Habit. You see, the author of this book is a bit too extreme about nothing. Your life has no meaning. I'm not telling you this to make you think about jumping off the nearest bridge. Instead, I mean it in a much more contemplative way. Let's first acknowledge that the meaning we find in people, objects, and our own circumstances is objective. These things have no inherent meaning. Functional and dysfunctional behavior both result from choices people make based on meanings they create. This also means that we have the power to alter our perceptions revising perceptions that bring us down and enhancing those that help us. Your outlook on life is deeply entwined in your propensity for success. Miserable blowhards can achieve, however, they still wind up miserable. That's not success. Success is doing what you love and being happy about it. So there it is. And you give everything its meaning. Now, you can try to find this book and read it, but that one page basically changed my perspective on everything. And then there's this book, No Man is Free Who is Not Master of Himself, 2000 years old guide to peaceful living. So you see how even 2000 years ago people had the same struggles that we have today. In this book, I'm gonna read my most favorite paragraph. What is it that humanity is seeking? Money, health, to love, to be loved. Isn't there only one reason for people to want all this? Don't we try to reach happiness and peace? But then, does happiness come with having things or by not wanting anything? Now, imagine yourself dressed in your shoes on, a bag in your hand, wallet in your pocket, an umbrella if it's a rainy day, and maybe a car key in hand. And now imagine that you let them go one by one. Put the car key on a table close by. Come on, do it. Let go of your umbrella. Take your wallet out of your pocket or purse and throw it away. Don't even turn around and look if it's still there. This is the first concern you must get rid of. Next, take off your jacket. Take off your clothes and your shoes. Now, get undressed, layer by layer. Imagine that an invisible hand reached out, took them away and disappeared. Now, there's only you and your thoughts. You see? It comes back to the mind. So if you get rid of everything, like your clothes, your belongings, your relationships, your everybody and everything, and that happens, tragedy happens. Sometimes we have tsunamis that wipes out everything. Sometimes we have earthquakes. Sometimes people just steal our things. And what do you have at the end of the day? Your mind. And in the very beginning of this video, when I was talking about Banami Khudawand Jan wa Khirad, that's exactly what Firdausi was saying 1,000 years ago. You are the owner of this body and this mind, and whatever you deducted from this particular first video, which I'm gonna come back and talk more about different philosophies and different things that I have learned the last 2 years. At the end of the day, you are nothing but this mind and this body, and that makes you unique. In the words of Robert Greene that I read the paragraph earlier. So embrace your uniqueness and celebrate that you are who you are and that you are unique.